How birds navigate thousands of miles without maps. Across oceans, mountains, and endless forests, birds travel thousands of miles without the aid of maps, GPS, or human guidance. Their journeys are astonishing feats of precision, endurance, and timing, yet the mechanisms behind them remain partially hidden, blending instinct, learning, and environmental awareness into an almost mystical navigational ability. Some rely on the sun or stars, others sense Earth's magnetic fields, and many memorize landmarks, winds, and scents along the way. From first-time fledglings testing their wings to seasoned adults returning to the same stopovers year after year, every flight reveals a complex interplay between inborn orientation and experience. Step into the world of birds and uncover the remarkable ways they chart their courses, defying distance, weather, and terrain, while exploring how evolution has crafted one of nature's most extraordinary navigational systems, the mystery of long-distance flight. The vast sky stretches endlessly above, and yet every year, countless birds take to it with a confidence that seems almost impossible. Some will fly thousands of miles, crossing oceans, deserts, and mountain ranges, moving from one hemisphere to another with remarkable precision. Consider the Arctic tern, which undertakes the longest migration of any bird, traveling nearly 25,000 miles each year from the Arctic to the Antarctic and back. These tiny creatures, no bigger than a pigeon, depart in the spring from Greenland and Iceland, following routes that wind across the open ocean. Guided by instincts that humans can barely comprehend, they face freezing temperatures, violent storms, and vast stretches of empty water. Yet the terns rarely falter. Their journey alone challenges everything we understand about endurance and navigation in the natural world. Even more striking is the story of the bar-tailed godwit. In 2020, researchers tracked a single female as she flew non-stop from Alaska to New Zealand, a journey of more than 70 miles that took nearly 9 days without stopping. She crossed the Pacific Ocean entirely on her own, guided by something beyond sight, smell, or sound. Scientists are still amazed at how birds like this can maintain a straight course over such vast distances, often avoiding storms and conserving energy with near-perfect efficiency. The bar-tailed godwit's feat raises a question that has puzzled naturalists for centuries. How do these animals know where to go when their destination is thousands of miles away and the terrain below offers no familiar landmarks? No migratory bird is too small to be touched by these mysteries. The blackpoll warbler, a bird weighing less than an ounce, leaves the forests of North America in late summer to fly across the Atlantic Ocean to South America. Some of these journeys last up to 90 hours non-stop. These tiny birds carry the equivalent of human marathon runners, enduring exhaustion, hunger, and extreme weather. Yet somehow, they survive and arrive at the correct location without ever having been there before. Early observers of migration, such as ornithologist Salim Ali in India during the mid-20th century, noted that even birds raised in captivity could find their way to the proper migratory routes once released, hinting that navigation might be innate rather than learned. The question of direction and distance has also fascinated scientists in Europe for decades. In the 1950s, researchers experimented with European robins, observing that they consistently headed south for winter migration, even when raised in environments far from their natural habitats. The consistency of these migrations, year after year, demonstrates that birds carry some form of internal map, a guide invisible to humans but present in their behavior. Many species travel along precisely timed schedules, departing at dusk or dawn, to catch favorable winds or avoid predators. Swainson's thrushes in North America, for example, have been observed adjusting their flight paths according to prevailing weather conditions while still maintaining a course towards Central America. Some birds travel alone, while others journey in flocks, yet both strategies demand a level of coordination that defies easy explanation. The skein of geese flying in formation over the plains of North America is not just a spectacle of synchronized wing beats. It also represents a carefully balanced system where individuals conserve energy, communicate with one another, and stay on course for thousands of miles. Even when storms force them off track, the geese rarely lose sight of their ultimate destination. This combination of physical endurance, environmental awareness, and social cooperation has led scientists to realize that migration is far more complex than a simple matter of flying in a straight line. Despite the extensive research over the past century, the fundamental question remains unsolved. What guides birds across oceans, deserts, and continents with such reliability? Satellite tracking and banding have revealed patterns and routes, yet the mechanisms that enable birds to find their way remain elusive. It is as if each bird carries a secret map embedded deep within its body, a map that responds to invisible cues in the earth, sky, and even magnetic fields. Every spring and fall, as flocks disappear over the horizon, or tiny songbirds vanish into the night, we are reminded of the astonishing capabilities of the natural world and how little we truly understand about the mysteries of long-distance flight. The journeys of these birds are more than just survival. They are feats of endurance and precision that challenge our understanding of biology, physics, and instinct. From the Arctic tern's endless circuit to the bar-tailed godwit's non-stop transoceanic flight, the evidence is clear. Nature has designed creatures capable of feats that seem impossible by human standards. The skies are filled with living navigators, silently proving that the mysteries of the natural world are far from solved, and that the answer to how birds navigate thousands of miles without maps may be one of the most extraordinary secrets yet to be uncovered. Born to find their way. From the moment they hatch, many migratory birds carry an invisible guide within them, an instinct that pushes them to move in directions they have never seen before. In Europe, young Eurasian blackcaps leave the forests of Germany for wintering grounds in Spain, without ever following an older bird. Ornithologists observed that even when these birds were raised in isolation, they still departed along the correct route, flying at the proper time of day and maintaining a steady southern direction. This innate sense suggests that birds are born with a map of sorts, a set of instructions written into their genes that directs them towards survival and safety. Hatchlings of the American robin display similar instincts, often leaving their birthplace in autumn without guidance from adult birds. In some cases, robins that were relocated hundreds of miles from their nesting grounds still chose a route toward traditional wintering areas, a feat that hints at a built-in compass guiding their journey. The precision of these flights challenges the idea that navigation is learned solely through experience. Warblers, no heavier than a handful of ounces, display astonishing navigational skills from their initial journey. In studies conducted in the 1960s, scientists released captive-bred blackpoll warblers and monitored their initial flights. Despite never having flown in the wild, the birds consistently headed toward the Atlantic, beginning the transoceanic segment of their migration with little hesitation. Some species, like the bar-headed goose, rely on a combination of innate instincts and environmental signals to reach high-altitude destinations. These geese cross the Himalayas during migration, flying at altitudes above 20, 0 feet where oxygen is thin, and temperatures plunge below freezing. Even the youngest members of the flock appear to know when to ascend, how to adjust their wing beats for thin air, and which passes to follow to avoid the harshest conditions. Migration is not just about reaching a destination. It also involves timing and endurance. The garden warbler in Europe begins its journey in late August, taking advantage of seasonal winds to cross the Mediterranean and the Sahara Desert. Observers have found that fledglings follow the same timetable as adults, leaving just days apart to optimize weather conditions. Even if they have never experienced the route before, these birds adjust their departure according to environmental rhythms, suggesting that instinct and natural cues work together to guide them with remarkable accuracy. Predators and unpredictable weather make navigation even more critical. Young white storks face storms and sudden temperature drops while flying across the Mediterranean. Observers in the 1950s recorded fledglings altering their flight paths mid-migration, demonstrating an ability to respond to danger without losing their overall sense of direction. Survival depends not just on knowledge, but on an instinctual flexibility that keeps them on course. The neurological foundations of these instincts are beginning to draw scientific attention. The hippocampus, a part of the brain linked to spatial memory, appears more developed in migratory birds than in non-migratory species. Experiments with young homing pigeons have shown that their navigation abilities emerge even when deprived of visual experience of the outside world. This suggests that the foundation of their directional sense is innate. Attempts to intervene only underscore how powerful instinct truly is. In North America, biologists have relocated young Canada geese to unfamiliar locations, yet these birds still manage to join migration routes correctly. Such observations demonstrate that the urge to migrate and the ability to find the proper route are hardwired traits, guiding birds across landscapes they have never explored and through challenges they have never encountered. The combination of genetics, environmental cues, and neurological development forms a remarkable system that allows birds to navigate with precision from their very first flight. From blackcaps in Germany to warblers crossing the Atlantic, the evidence is clear. Migratory birds are born to find their way. Each instinctive departure, each instinctive turn in the sky, reveals a natural intelligence that has evolved over millions of years, equipping creatures no larger than a human hand with the extraordinary ability to move across continents with unerring accuracy. With every study of these instinctive migrations, it becomes evident that the journey is built into the very fabric of life. We are still trying to decode the invisible instructions that direct them. Birds remind us that the natural world contains knowledge that we can observe but cannot yet fully understand, and that some of the greatest feats of navigation are accomplished not through maps or tools, but through the mysterious power of instinct that has guided every generation from the moment it first takes flight. The sun as a compass. Birds have been using the sun as a guide for millions of years, following its path across the sky to maintain direction during long migrations. Observations of European starlings show that these birds adjust their flight patterns according to the position of the sun, compensating for its movement throughout the day. In controlled experiments in the 1960s, researchers placed starlings in circular cages with access to sunlight through small openings, and the birds consistently oriented themselves in the proper migratory direction. Even when the sun's position shifted, these experiments suggested that birds possess an internal clock that works in combination with sunlight to keep them on course. In addition to starlings, the skylark also demonstrates an extraordinary ability to navigate using the sun. When young skylarks were displaced hundreds of miles from their usual migration routes, they adjusted their flight to align with the sun's angle, ultimately finding their way toward traditional wintering grounds. The interplay between internal timing and the sun's movement forms a natural compass, one that has allowed countless species to survive harsh migrations. When moving through uncharted areas, even shorebirds lean heavily on the sun for navigation. The red knot, which migrates from the Arctic to South America, depends on the sun to maintain its north-south orientation during daylight hours. Scientists tracking these birds discovered that on cloudy days, when the sun was obscured, knots showed signs of disorientation, often veering off course. This shows that sunlight is not just a convenience, but a critical component of long-distance navigation. Some migratory birds combine solar guidance with other cues, yet the sun often remains the primary reference. Homing pigeons, for instance, can navigate using magnetic fields and familiar landmarks. But when released in unfamiliar territory during clear daylight, they rely on the sun to set their course. Early studies conducted in France in the 1950s demonstrated that when pigeons were equipped with tiny frosted lenses that distorted the sun's image, their orientation became confused, and they struggled to reach home. The timing of departure also depends on the sun. Many migratory species begin flights at dawn, taking advantage of calm winds and optimal lighting. The garden warbler in Europe, for instance, departs in early morning, using the rising sun to calibrate its direction and maintain energy efficiency during long flights. Even on long journeys that span weeks, this solar compass allows them to maintain remarkably straight paths across forests, rivers, and open plains. Nighttime migration in certain species is made possible by calibration performed under the sun earlier. Studies of the European robin show that juvenile birds observe the sun's movement in daylight and store this information for use during nocturnal flights. By noting the sun's position relative to shadows and landmarks, the robins develop an internal map that guides them even under moonlight or overcast skies. This ability to translate daytime cues into nighttime navigation highlights the complexity of the solar compass. showing that birds integrate multiple forms of information to achieve precise orientation. Extreme latitudes, with their unusual solar patterns, still see birds fine-tuning their navigation to stay on course. Arctic terns experience continuous daylight in summer, yet they adjust their internal clocks to account for the sun's 24-hour trajectory, maintaining southward flight toward wintering grounds. Similarly, long-distance migrators in northern Europe time their departures carefully in late summer to avoid periods when the sun is too low or too high. The reliance on the sun also reveals how birds compensate for environmental challenges. Strong winds or sudden storms can push flocks off course, yet when the clouds clear, migratory birds rapidly reorient themselves using the sun's position. In 1984, researchers observed a flock of European robins in Sweden that had been blown hundreds of miles off their normal route. Within hours of returning to clear skies, the birds corrected their heading, illustrating the solar compass's role as a dependable reference point, even when other cues fail. By observing birds in both natural and controlled conditions, scientists have come to understand that the sun is more than a source of light. It is a vital tool in the migratory toolkit. From starlings and skylarks to red knots and robins, these creatures combine solar guidance with instinct, memory, and environmental awareness to achieve flights that span continents. Each long journey across unfamiliar terrain demonstrates the remarkable way birds integrate time and direction, using sunlight as a constant companion that guides them toward survival and success. Stars that guide the night travelers. When the sun disappears beyond the horizon, many migratory birds begin a different kind of journey, one guided by the stars instead of daylight. Nocturnal species such as the indigo bunting take advantage of the night sky, navigating hundreds or even thousands of miles while humans sleep. In the 1950s, Austrian zoologist Karl von Frisch conducted experiments showing that these birds orient themselves by the pattern of stars, particularly using the constellations near the North Star as a reference. The birds placed in planetariums would align their initial migratory direction according to the simulated star patterns, even when other visual cues were removed, demonstrating a remarkable ability to read the heavens. Young indigo buntings, just beginning their first migration, rely heavily on the rotation of the night sky to establish a sense of direction. By watching the movement of the stars over time, these fledglings can determine north and south without ever having flown with older birds. Field studies in New Jersey in the 1960s revealed that when clouds blocked the stars, the buntings became temporarily disoriented, often circling before regaining a steady course. This reliance on celestial patterns shows that night navigation is not simply instinctual, but also depends on acute observation and processing of the environment. Larger species, like the Eurasian nightjar, use stellar cues as essential guides on their nocturnal journeys. These birds travel hundreds of miles each night, from northern Europe to Africa, often crossing regions with few landmarks. Scientists tracking their flight paths found that nightjars adjust their heading according to the constellations overhead, maintaining a remarkably straight route despite the absence of visible terrain features. The precision of their course suggests that stars are as reliable a compass for night travelers as the sun is for those migrating by day. The way birds interpret the night sky is more sophisticated than simply following one bright point. Many species, including the northern saw-whet owl, use patterns created by the rotation of the stars around a central point to understand both direction and time. By integrating this information with their internal clocks, they can maintain a consistent heading throughout the night, even during long flights that span several hours. Observations in the 1970s in Canada demonstrated that owls released in unfamiliar territory would adjust their path after observing the stars, a behavior that reinforces the idea of a built-in celestial navigation system. Using the sun by day and stars by night, some birds achieve constant directional guidance. Swainson's thrushes, for example, rely on sunlight during the day and shift seamlessly to stars at night. Researchers in the 1980s noted that these birds begin calibrating their internal compass before sunset, ensuring a smooth transition to nocturnal navigation. This ability to integrate multiple sources of directional information highlights the sophistication of migratory behavior. showing that birds are capable of complex spatial reasoning beyond what was once imagined. Night migrations also offer protection and efficiency, but they require precise navigation to avoid getting lost. The eastern whippoorwill, a small songbird of North America, travels long distances under the cover of darkness to evade predators. Biologists observed that when cloud cover obscured the stars, some whippoorwills delayed departure or flew in circles, demonstrating their dependence on the celestial map. Once the skies cleared, the birds resumed their correct course, underscoring the critical role of star patterns in guiding these fragile travelers across vast and unfamiliar terrain. The constellations provide a reliable framework for navigation. Even in the southern hemisphere, birds such as the southern yellow white-eye use the Southern Cross to orient themselves during migrations within Africa. Experiments in the 1960s and 1970s found that when these birds were placed in planetariums with rotated star patterns, they adjusted their orientation according to the shifted constellations, proving that they were not merely following innate directions, but actively interpreting the night sky. This capacity to read celestial cues demonstrates a universal adaptation among nocturnal migratory birds, linking navigation to the rhythm of the heavens. The study of stellar navigation continues to reveal the depth of avian intelligence and adaptability. Each night, as flocks cross oceans, deserts, and forests under a canopy of stars, they demonstrate a mastery of natural tools that humans have only begun to replicate. From buntings and nightjars to owls and whippoorwills, birds prove that navigation is not limited to memory or landmarks. It is a dynamic process that draws on instinct, observation, and an understanding of the celestial world. The stars guide these night travelers with remarkable precision, a secret system of orientation that has allowed generations of birds to traverse the globe successfully, night after night. The magnetic sense of birds. Some of the most astonishing feats of bird migration are guided not by the sun or stars, but by an invisible force surrounding the Earth itself. Scientists have long suspected that birds can sense the planet's magnetic field, and research over the past few decades has confirmed that this ability is both real and vital. In the 1970s, biologists discovered that European robins could orient themselves correctly even on cloudy days or at night, suggesting that they relied on something unseen. Experiments later demonstrated that altering the magnetic field around the birds caused them to change direction, revealing a built-in compass tuned to the Earth itself. The mechanisms behind this magnetic sense are complex and still partly mysterious. Some birds appear to have magnetoreceptors in their beaks that detect changes in the field, while others seem to rely on specialized cells in the eyes sensitive to magnetic information. In 2002, a study at the University of Oldenburg in Germany showed that robins' eyes respond to the alignment of magnetic fields, allowing them to see direction as patterns of light and color invisible to humans. This sense enables birds to maintain accurate headings over vast distances, even when all familiar landmarks are absent. Young migratory birds demonstrate the magnetic sense from their very first flights. In North America, juvenile bobolinks, released far from their typical migration route, were able to correct their course by relying on the Earth's magnetic field, eventually joining the main flock heading south. These birds had never traveled the route before, yet their instinctive ability to interpret magnetic cues ensured that they did not drift endlessly. Observers have noted that even in adverse weather or low visibility, magnetic orientation provides a reliable framework for movement. By blending magnetic sense with other navigation strategies, some species enhance their directional accuracy. Homing pigeons, for example, use visual landmarks, the sun, and stars, alongside magnetic cues, to reach their lofts from unfamiliar locations. In experiments where pigeons were fitted with small magnets, their ability to navigate home was disrupted, while control groups without magnets flew straight to their destination. Such studies highlight how integral the magnetic sense is, functioning as a constant reference point that supplements other methods of orientation. The magnetic sense is especially critical for long-distance ocean crossings, where familiar landmarks are scarce. Bar-tailed godwits and Arctic terns, which travel thousands of miles across the open ocean, appear to rely heavily on this invisible guide. Tracking studies conducted in the 2010s revealed that these birds maintain near-perfect straight-line trajectories, even over empty seas, where no visual or auditory cues exist. The Earth's magnetic field provides the framework for these journeys, allowing birds to detect subtle shifts in direction and adjust their flight paths accordingly. Flocking birds seem to communicate magnetic information with one another. Observations of Canada geese migrating across North America suggest that while individual birds detect the magnetic field, flock leaders often make slight course adjustments that the others follow, creating a collective navigation system. This coordination ensures that the group remains on track, and it demonstrates how magnetic perception can work in combination with social behavior to guide complex movements. Seasonal timing is also linked to the magnetic sense. Some birds detect not only the direction but also changes in the strength and inclination of the magnetic field, which can signal their geographic location along a migration route. In the 1990s, researchers in Finland found that thrushes displaced east or west adjusted their headings based on subtle changes in the magnetic field, allowing them to approximate their correct north-south path even without landmarks. These adjustments reveal a level of precision that borders on mathematical calculation, driven entirely by sensory perception rather than experience. As technology advances, our understanding of magnetic navigation continues to grow. Tiny tracking devices, combined with laboratory experiments, have shown that even small songbirds like warblers carry an internal compass capable of detecting minute variations in the Earth's field. This sensory ability works in concert with celestial cues, wind patterns, and environmental signals, forming a multi-layered system that ensures survival across extreme distances. Many details of how the magnetic sense works remain elusive, despite long-term study. Scientists still debate how birds integrate magnetic information with other sensory inputs, and how these mechanisms are encoded in the brain and eyes. Each discovery, however, reinforces the idea that birds are equipped with an extraordinary natural tool, a magnetic compass that guides them silently and reliably across continents and oceans. These invisible forces, felt but unseen, allow birds to traverse vast distances with a precision that continues to astonish human observers. Landmarks, rivers, and mountains. In a world dominated by hidden cues, birds still follow the land below, traveling along rivers, valleys, and mountain ranges like natural highways. White storks in Europe, for example, trace the course of the Danube and the Rhine during migration, using the rivers to maintain a steady heading toward Africa. Researchers have observed that storks adjust their flight paths when a river bends or forks, demonstrating a keen awareness of these natural markers. Such landmarks serve as reference points that help birds conserve energy and avoid unnecessary detours during migrations that span thousands of miles. Valleys and mountain passes also play a critical role for species navigating difficult terrain. In the Rocky Mountains, golden eagles use the ridges and valleys to gain lift from thermal currents, which reduces the effort needed to traverse long distances. Observers have documented young eagles following the same passes as experienced adults, learning routes that provide both safety and energy efficiency. These natural formations act as guides, creating corridors that shape the paths of migratory birds, while also offering shelter from storms and predators. Shorelines function as essential markers for birds crossing oceans or large lakes. The semi-palmated sandpiper, which migrates from the Arctic to South America, often hugs the edges of coastlines during the first portion of its journey. Scientists tracking these sandpipers with radar in the 1980s found that birds use the visual contrast between land and water to maintain direction, adjusting their course when coastlines curve or shift. By following these cues, birds can navigate vast stretches of open water with remarkable accuracy, despite having no other landmarks for hundreds of miles. Forests and vegetation patterns also inform the routes of migratory species. In North America, wood thrushes follow the dense corridors of deciduous forests during fall migration, using them as both navigation aids and safe resting spots. Studies in Pennsylvania showed that displaced thrushes often return to familiar forested areas to reorient themselves before continuing south. These observations highlight the way birds integrate visual information from the environment, linking specific terrain features to memory and instinct to chart long journeys. Desert edges and river systems serve as lifelines for birds traveling through harsh climates. The sand grouse in Africa, for instance, travels along the margins of the Sahara, moving from water source to water source. Observers have noted that these birds often follow dry riverbeds or scattered oases, using them as checkpoints to avoid dehydration. By combining innate migration routes with visual cues from the landscape, they are able to survive extreme conditions that would overwhelm less adapted species. To navigate more accurately, some birds weave together multiple types of landmarks. The bar-tailed godwit, during its non-stop flight from Alaska to New Zealand, uses coastal outlines, islands, and ocean currents as visual references when over land or near the shore. Biologists tracking these flights discovered that when weather obscures certain features, the birds shift slightly to find alternate markers, demonstrating flexibility in their navigational strategy. This ability to integrate several types of environmental information allows them to maintain course even under challenging conditions. Human-made structures can occasionally aid navigation as well. Large bridges, towers, and roads can serve as reference points for urban-adapted species like pigeons or crows. Experiments in the 1970s showed that pigeons released hundreds of miles from home often oriented themselves by visible cities or highways before switching to magnetic or celestial cues. While natural landmarks remain primary guides for most species, the capacity to use man-made structures illustrates the adaptability of avian navigation. Minor variations in the ground below can affect the way birds fly. The American kestrel often follows ridge lines and tree lines during migration to locate hunting areas and maintain orientation. Observations in the Appalachian Mountains revealed that these small raptors adjust altitude and direction based on the shape of valleys, rising to catch thermals or following ridges to conserve energy. The combination of instinct and keen observation allows them to read the landscape as a map, converting physical features into directional cues. The use of landmarks, rivers, and mountains highlights the way birds combine multiple senses to navigate. Visual cues work alongside magnetic perception, celestial guidance, and internal timing to create a sophisticated system of orientation. Each journey demonstrates an intricate balance between innate ability and environmental awareness, with landscapes acting as both guides and checkpoints. Birds moving across continents show that even familiar features, when interpreted correctly, can serve as powerful tools in the invisible map that guides their incredible migrations. Smell and the olfactory map. The faint scent of pine and soil drifts across the countryside, and homing pigeons can read these invisible signals to find their way home. In Italy, during the 1970s, biologists conducted experiments showing that pigeons released hundreds of miles from their lofts could still orient themselves accurately. When their sense of smell was blocked with small nasal plugs, however, the birds became disoriented and struggled to navigate, revealing that odor is not just a supplement, but a crucial part of their natural map. Across the open seas, northern fulmars detect subtle chemical signals from plankton-rich waters, allowing them to locate feeding grounds hundreds of kilometers away. Observers in Iceland during the early 2000s tracked fulmars as they honed in on these invisible markers, proving that olfactory cues guide more than just land-based journeys. These chemical trails act as directional beacons, providing birds with information that the eye alone cannot capture. Recent studies suggest that birds can even detect airborne chemicals from several kilometers away, giving them a long-range sense of orientation previously underestimated by scientists. Juvenile pigeons, taking their first flight from unfamiliar release points, appear to interpret odors instinctively. Winds carry the scent of forests, fields, and even urban areas, which the birds associate with directions toward home. Experiments in Germany in the 1980s demonstrated that pigeons raised in a single environment could still use novel smells from a new location to orient themselves, suggesting that olfactory navigation combines both instinct and rapid learning. Some pigeons appear to memorize the unique combination of scents along their regular flight paths, forming a mental map that links smell with specific locations. Along coastlines, the smell of saltwater and estuaries guides seabirds toward nesting colonies and feeding zones. Gulls flying along the North American Atlantic coast follow the scent of ocean currents to locate rich feeding grounds, adjusting their paths when wind patterns shift. This ability to translate faint chemical signals into movement allows them to traverse vast stretches of water without losing their way. Some seabirds combine olfactory cues with sound, listening to distant waves or calls of other birds, to enhance their navigation over open water. The journey of migration is guided by many factors, with smells providing stability to flight paths. European starlings, departing from northern forests in autumn, appear to recognize subtle changes in vegetation and soil scent that indicate familiar terrain. Studies in Spain showed that birds released off course could recalibrate their direction after detecting these environmental smells, demonstrating that olfactory input complements visual and magnetic navigation. In deserts and arid regions, scent marks from sparse vegetation or water sources serve as essential guides. African sandgrouse, for instance, follow the edges of desert oases, using odors carried by the wind to find distant waterholes. Observers noted that these birds can traverse hundreds of kilometers across harsh landscapes, demonstrating that smell can provide critical checkpoints where other sensory information is minimal. Even pollutants and urban odors can alter a bird's route, suggesting that human activity has a direct impact on olfactory navigation. Garden warblers and other migratory songbirds use their sense of smell to navigate back to familiar stopover locations each season. By associating specific odors with resting and feeding locations, these birds can navigate unfamiliar terrain while still maintaining a sense of direction. Field studies in southern Spain found that displaced warblers would seek out areas with familiar scents before continuing their southward journey, suggesting a sophisticated integration of memory and olfactory cues. Collective navigation improves as birds in a flock communicate through subtle scent signals. When homing pigeons are released in small groups, the first birds detect local odors that indicate wind direction or nearby landmarks. The remaining flock members follow these initial readings, creating a coordinated route. This teamwork demonstrates that smell is not only a personal tool, but also a communal resource for maintaining accurate movement. When clouds block the sun or stars vanish from the night sky, birds can still rely on scent as a guide. Coastal gulls and forest-dwelling thrushes have been observed using faint environmental odors to correct their flight paths, ensuring they reach familiar feeding grounds or nesting sites. These chemical cues function like invisible markers, allowing birds to navigate across vast and changing landscapes. Instinct, experience, and the sense of smell combine to create a sophisticated, multi-layered navigation system. From pigeons and warblers to fulmars and gulls, birds integrate scent with magnetic fields, celestial cues, and visual landmarks to achieve astonishing precision. Each whiff of air becomes part of an invisible map, guiding birds over continents, oceans, and forests with reliability that continues to astonish scientists. Researchers are now investigating whether climate change, by altering wind patterns and plant emissions, could disrupt the olfactory maps that birds rely on for migration. Weather, wind, and environmental clues. A sudden shift in the wind can change the course of a migrating flock, yet many birds seem to read these subtle atmospheric cues with remarkable accuracy. Observers in the United Kingdom have noted that European starlings adjust their departure times depending on wind direction and strength, leaving only when conditions favor energy-efficient flight. In 1989, a study tracking starlings during fall migration revealed that birds often wait for favorable tailwinds, demonstrating that they can sense both the force and direction of moving air to optimize their journey. Cloud patterns and pressure changes also provide essential information for long-distance travelers. In North America, the ruby-throated hummingbird appears to anticipate storms by altering its flight altitude, climbing higher when barometric pressure drops and descending when winds shift. Researchers at Cornell University in the early 2000s monitored these tiny birds and discovered that their ability to sense atmospheric changes allowed them to avoid severe weather that could jeopardize survival, showing that environmental awareness extends far beyond visible landmarks. Fluctuations in temperature guide certain birds along their migratory paths. The bar-tailed godwit, during its non-stop migration from Alaska to New Zealand, rides rising thermal currents that form when the sun warms the land and air. Observers tracking these birds with satellite transmitters found that godwits adjust their flight paths to catch the most favorable thermals, conserving energy over thousands of kilometers. The ability to detect and exploit subtle temperature differences demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of the environment that guides birds even over featureless landscapes. Humidity and scent carried by the wind often combine to create invisible markers. Homing pigeons in Europe, for instance, rely not only on the chemical composition of the air, but also on moisture levels to identify familiar regions. Experiments in the 1970s showed that when pigeons were released during periods of high humidity with altered air composition, their flight paths deviated, whereas under normal conditions, they maintained precise orientation. These findings suggest that birds integrate multiple environmental signals to refine their sense of direction. The presence of nearby storms can dramatically influence migratory decisions. Swainson's thrushes in eastern Canada have been observed delaying departure for several hours or even days when thunderstorms approach, waiting for clearer skies and stable winds. Biologists using radar and field observation in 1997 noted that flocks shifted their usual timing and altitude based on storm systems, highlighting that birds actively monitor changing weather rather than simply following instinctual schedules. Topography interacts with weather in ways that enhance navigation. In the Andes, Andean condors ride mountain updrafts and channel winds along valleys to traverse vast areas with minimal energy expenditure. Observers in Peru recorded condors adjusting their routes according to wind shifts along ridges, demonstrating that birds integrate terrain and atmospheric conditions simultaneously. This combination of cues allows for highly efficient, long-distance travel, even in regions with complex geography. Periodic shifts in primary winds strongly influence the scheduling of migration. In Europe, ospreys migrating south rely on predictable southward winds in late summer to guide them across the Mediterranean, while strong northward winds can delay departures. Field studies in Spain in the 1980s documented these patterns, showing that birds often wait for optimal wind conditions to ensure the fastest and safest passage across challenging stretches of water. Small gusts can redirect the formation and patterns of group flight. Flocks of Canada geese adjust their V-formation spacing and altitude in response to wind turbulence, minimizing energy loss and maintaining cohesion. Observations in Minnesota during fall migration demonstrated that geese respond instantaneously to sudden gusts, changing their formation angles and rotation of led birds to maintain aerodynamic efficiency. This real-time adaptation reflects an acute sensitivity to environmental conditions that few other animals possess. Nighttime migrations are also influenced by environmental cues. European robins, traveling under cloudy skies, rely on a combination of wind patterns and residual scent markers to maintain their path. Studies in Scandinavia in the 1990s found that robins adjust their headings according to shifts in wind direction, even when celestial cues are unavailable, showing that environmental awareness is critical when other navigational tools are obscured. Temperature, wind, humidity, and atmospheric pressure all converge to form an invisible network of guidance for migratory birds. From starlings and hummingbirds to godwits and robins, each species reads these signals with extraordinary precision. By combining weather information with magnetic, celestial, olfactory, and visual cues, birds create a dynamic system that allows them to cross continents, oceans, and extreme landscapes. These environmental clues are not merely background conditions, they are active tools that help birds survive and thrive on some of the longest journeys in the natural world. Social learning and flock memory. A young starling flutters hesitantly at dawn, watching the adults twist and turn, memorizing every subtle motion that will guide its first long flight. Across Europe, ornithologists have observed juvenile starlings relying on these visual cues, internalizing the patterns of movement that allow them to navigate thousands of miles. By following experienced flock members, these fledglings can learn both routes and resting sites without prior exposure, demonstrating that observation is as vital as instinct. High above fields and rivers, Canada geese carve through the sky in precise formations, each bird attuned to the shifts of its neighbors. In the 1970s, studies revealed that young geese imprint on the flight patterns of adults, learning complex routes that they will reproduce independently in later migrations. The transfer of this knowledge ensures that entire flocks maintain cohesion while also passing down survival strategies across generations. The soft rustle of wings carries subtle lessons that many songbirds can interpret. European starlings, when traveling over unfamiliar territory, adjust their direction based on the movements of experienced companions, even if the landmarks below are unknown. Observers in the United Kingdom found that juveniles released from their usual paths quickly corrected their bearings by watching adult neighbors, proving that social learning can compensate for a lack of personal experience. On coastal islands, homing pigeons demonstrate the power of shared environmental knowledge. Experiments in Germany in the 1980s showed that groups of inexperienced pigeons released together often reach their lofts faster and more accurately than solitary birds. The birds seem to pool observations about wind, scent, and visible terrain, effectively creating a collective memory that guides them home. Calls and murmurs within a flock can carry vital information across distances. In Alberta, Canada, jays have been observed following adult vocalizations during seasonal movements, learning the location of hidden food caches and secure resting spots. By interpreting these auditory cues, juveniles develop a mental map of both direction and resources, blending sensory information with social learning to navigate more efficiently. Storms often test the limits of a flock's coordination, forcing birds to adapt quickly. European swifts encountering unexpected weather patterns in the Netherlands during the 1990s were seen to adjust their course, with younger birds following the corrections made by experienced leaders. This real-time adaptation allows migrations to continue safely, and it illustrates how shared knowledge helps flocks overcome unpredictable environmental challenges. Night migration introduces additional challenges, yet social guidance remains essential. Indigo buntings, flying under overcast skies, follow the headings of older birds to maintain straight trajectories over unfamiliar terrain. Field observations in New Jersey revealed that juveniles watch wing beats, body posture, and subtle shifts in orientation, integrating these visual signals into their own navigational decisions when celestial cues are obscured. Open ocean crossings highlight the value of intergenerational knowledge. Shearwaters departing from Australian coasts are guided by adults toward feeding zones hundreds of kilometers away. Satellite tracking studies in 2010 showed that fledglings replicate these routes precisely once they reach maturity, confirming that social learning ensures continuity in migration across years and even decades. The art of flying with minimal energy is learned from others in the flock. Bar-tailed godwits facing strong headwinds adjust their altitude and spacing by following older birds that detect more favorable currents. Observers in New Zealand documented that juveniles who followed leaders reached feeding grounds more quickly and with less fatigue than those traveling alone, demonstrating that flock memory optimizes both navigation and survival. Golden eagles, often thought of as solitary hunters, can also gain indirect social insights. Young raptors watch the paths of experienced adults from a distance, noting thermals, ridges, and safe corridors. Observations in the Rocky Mountains during the 2000s indicated that these indirect lessons dramatically improved the success rate of first-time migrations, showing that social learning need not always be interactive to be effective. The fusion of observation, imitation, and collective memory transforms a group of individual birds into a highly efficient navigational unit. Each flight offers a lesson, each leader a source of guidance, and each environmental cue a detail to remember. Across continents, oceans, and mountain ranges, this social learning ensures that even the youngest or least experienced birds can complete journeys spanning thousands of miles. Through the integration of individual instinct and collective experience, birds preserve a living archive of navigation skills. From starlings and pigeons to shearwaters and eagles, social learning and flock memory reinforce routes, improve survival, and guarantee that critical migratory knowledge is passed from one generation to the next. In this way, birds demonstrate not just remarkable individual skill, but a communal intelligence honed over countless migrations. The brain behind the journey. Deep within the skull of a migrating bird A complex network of neurons tirelessly processes an astonishing array of information, transforming sensory input into precise navigation. Studies on homing pigeons in the 1980s revealed that specific regions in the hippocampus, an area associated with spatial memory, expand during migration season, suggesting that the bird's brain physically adapts to the demands of long-distance travel. This growth appears to strengthen the bird's ability to remember routes, landmarks, and environmental cues critical for survival. Electrophysiological studies indicate that the brain integrates multiple sources of data simultaneously. European robins, for example, combine visual landmarks, the position of the sun, and magnetic field information in real time to adjust their flight paths. Experiments conducted at the Max Planck Institute in Germany in 1995 showed that disrupting magnetic perception caused birds to compensate by relying more heavily on visual cues, revealing the brain's flexibility and resilience in processing overlapping navigational systems. Sensory input from the eyes, ears, and olfactory system converges in specialized regions of the brain, allowing birds to form a multi-layered map of their surroundings. Northern fulmars, while scanning the ocean for food and landmarks, simultaneously detect odors carried by wind and subtle magnetic variations. Observations off the coast of Iceland in the early 2000s demonstrated that this integration allows birds to maintain orientation even in featureless environments, such as open water, highlighting the sophisticated coordination occurring in their neural circuits. Memory formation plays a vital role in long-distance navigation. Juvenile starlings learn the routes of adults by observing flight paths and retaining visual, auditory, and olfactory cues. Field studies in the United Kingdom showed that these fledglings could later reproduce these routes independently, indicating that their brains can encode complex patterns of spatial and social information for future use. This capacity for long-term memory ensures that migration knowledge persists across years and even generations. Some aspects of navigation appear to be innate, hardwired into the brain's structure. Bar-tailed godwits departing from Alaska toward New Zealand display remarkably precise flight headings without prior experience. Researchers using satellite tracking in 2008 concluded that the bird's neural circuits must contain intrinsic mechanisms for orientation, possibly linked to internal clocks and magnetic sensitivity, allowing them to maintain course over thousands of kilometers of open ocean. Recent research, using tiny GPS loggers and brain scans, suggests that birds may form a neural representation of magnetic fields, essentially feeling direction as an internal sense. The brain's ability to adapt in response to environmental change is equally impressive. European starlings displaced from familiar routes demonstrate rapid reorientation, relying on new visual and olfactory cues to find their way. Experiments in Germany during the late 1990s showed that within hours, these birds recalibrated their navigation, indicating that their neural networks can process unexpected information and integrate it into existing maps, a flexibility essential for survival in dynamic landscapes. Neuroimaging studies suggest that social learning also shapes the migratory brain. Juvenile pigeons traveling with experienced adults show increased activation in areas associated with memory and decision-making compared with birds flying alone. Research in the early 2000s revealed that observing flockmates' behavior strengthens neural pathways, enabling the younger birds to encode and later reproduce successful routes. This demonstrates that the brain not only processes sensory input, but also absorbs lessons from social interactions. Even sleep appears to enhance navigational capabilities. European robins exhibit heightened hippocampal activity following nights of rest, suggesting that sleep consolidates spatial memory and prepares the brain for upcoming flights. Laboratory studies indicate that neural replay during sleep strengthens associations between landmarks, magnetic cues, and olfactory signals, ensuring that the bird's internal maps remain precise and updated. The interaction between sensory input, memory, and instinct allows the avian brain to solve complex navigational problems. When encountering storms, fog, or unfamiliar terrain, birds quickly weigh competing cues and adjust their paths. Observers tracking swifts in the Netherlands in the 1990s recorded rapid course corrections during sudden weather changes, highlighting the brain's role as an adaptive control center that continuously interprets incoming data to maintain orientation. Some studies indicate that neurotransmitters like dopamine may help birds evaluate risk and reward during migration, influencing decisions about when to rest, take shelter, or continue flying in challenging conditions. Ultimately, the remarkable journeys undertaken by migratory birds are made possible by a brain capable of integrating vast amounts of information, adapting to new challenges, and storing complex maps for future use. From innate directional instincts to learned routes, from social cues to environmental awareness, the avian brain orchestrates each element with precision and flexibility. This neural mastery transforms millions of sensory signals into coordinated movement, guiding birds safely across continents, oceans, and landscapes, often over distances and obstacles that would challenge even the most sophisticated human technology. Innate instinct versus learned routes. What guides a bird across a route it has never flown before? Juvenile blackcaps released far from their expected migratory path in Germany during the 1980s instinctively headed in the correct general direction, suggesting a built-in compass. These early flights show that while instinct cannot provide precise stopovers, it sets a reliable framework for the journey ahead, allowing fledglings to begin migration without prior experience. A foggy morning over open fields often reveals the importance of learning. Young starlings, following experienced adults, gradually memorize the safest resting spots and feeding grounds. Field studies in the United Kingdom showed that after a few seasons, these birds could navigate the same routes alone, illustrating how observation refines and strengthens the guidance instinct provided. Thousands of kilometers of open ocean offer no landmarks, yet bar-tailed godwits depart from Alaska toward New Zealand with remarkable precision. Satellite tracking in 2008 revealed that first-time migrants maintain accurate headings despite having no prior experience of the route. The combination of strong innate direction and endurance enables them to cover distances that would challenge even sophisticated human navigation tools. Internal rhythms play a critical role in timing departures and rest periods. Blackcaps and garden warblers, raised in captivity, follow circadian and circannual schedules similar to wild birds, leaving at optimal times to take advantage of wind patterns and seasonal conditions. These innate timing mechanisms synchronize migration with environmental opportunity, ensuring survival even before any learning occurs. Observation becomes essential when environmental conditions change unexpectedly. European robins displaced from their usual corridors often adjust flight paths by following visual or magnetic cues, demonstrating that learning can correct instinctive headings. Experiments in the 1990s showed juveniles quickly adapt to unfamiliar magnetic fields or landmark arrangements, indicating that flexibility is built into the navigational system. While instinct sets the broad course, many young birds refine their journeys by reading subtle environmental patterns that most humans would never notice. Polarized light at dawn and dusk provides a hidden compass, guiding them even when clouds obscure the sun, while shifts in wind and thermal currents offer invisible pathways that conserve energy over long flights. Juveniles appear to memorize these patterns during early migrations, learning when to glide, when to flap, and when to seek shelter, gradually building a map that integrates instinct with observation. Studies of European robins and blackcaps have shown that these learned adjustments improve flight efficiency, reduce exhaustion, and increase survival rates, demonstrating that navigation is not only about direction, but also about timing, endurance, and adaptability. The ability to combine inherited guidance with experiential cues allows birds to traverse thousands of kilometers with remarkable precision. Even on their first journeys, complex terrain amplifies the balance between instinct and experience. White storks, navigating rivers and mountain ridges, use instinct to maintain general southward progress, while fine-tuning their routes based on landmarks and seasonal winds. Observers in Spain documented juveniles recalibrating paths after encountering obstacles, proving that navigation relies on constant interaction between inherited abilities and experiential knowledge. The power of instinct is magnified when birds interact with one another. Pigeons traveling with older birds can align their inborn sense of direction with proven routes, combining natural guidance with social learning. Experiments in Germany demonstrated that juveniles guided by adult mentors return to their lofts faster and more accurately than solitary peers, showing the brain's capacity to merge inherited and learned information seamlessly. Unpredictable weather or magnetic anomalies test the limits of both instinct and learning. Flocks of European swifts navigating through sudden storms in the Netherlands often follow instinct until environmental feedback allows course correction. Juveniles learn which cues are reliable and which must be ignored, gradually developing judgment alongside raw directional sense. Memory strengthens navigation over time. Arctic terns returning from the Arctic to Antarctica rely on instinct for broad directional headings, yet stopover choices and route refinements are informed by prior experience. Studies in the early 2000s revealed that efficiency improves with each migration, showing how learning layers on top of innate orientation to create highly reliable performance. Survival depends on the interplay between inherited guidance and acquired knowledge. Birds integrate instinct, observation, and environmental cues in real time, weighing conflicting information to make precise decisions mid-flight. This synergy allows even the youngest or most inexperienced individuals to navigate safely across continents, oceans, and challenging terrain. Thousands of kilometers later, the outcome of each journey reflects the elegant collaboration between natural programming and learned strategies. Instinct sets the initial course, providing a foundation, while observation, memory, and experience refine navigation, improving efficiency and safety. Together, these mechanisms explain how birds traverse vast distances without maps, combining evolution and adaptation into an extraordinary migratory intelligence. Energy management and navigation. Across the vast expanses of the Arctic, bar-tailed godwits prepare for one of the most extraordinary migrations in the animal kingdom, covering more than 11,000 kilometers non-stop from Alaska to New Zealand. Scientists tracking these birds in 2008 found that they meticulously build energy reserves before departure, nearly doubling their body weight to endure the grueling flight. Every gram of fat matters, as even minor miscalculations could mean exhaustion over the open ocean, revealing that navigation is tightly linked to energy management from the very start. Early mornings along European rivers reveal flocks of swans, adjusting their departure times based on wind direction and thermal activity. Observers in Germany during the 1990s recorded how these birds wait for favorable conditions, demonstrating an acute awareness of how environmental forces can reduce energy expenditure while maintaining a steady migration path. This careful timing is as critical as the internal compass guiding their direction. Juvenile songbirds gradually learn to pace themselves on longer flights. Blackcaps released far from their usual routes in controlled experiments often took breaks in sheltered areas, conserving energy while integrating learned landmarks into their mental maps. These stops are not random. They are part of an instinctive rhythm that balances endurance with navigational accuracy, ensuring fledglings survive their first arduous journeys. Atmospheric temperature changes at high altitudes guide the strategies birds use in flight. Swainson's thrushes in North America were observed in the early 2000s using cooler evening air to reduce the energy needed for lift, gliding silently across forested valleys. Researchers noted that birds continually adjust altitude and wing beat frequency in response to thermal currents, combining physiology with environmental perception to optimize energy use throughout the journey. Feeding strategies before and during migration are equally important. Garden warblers in Europe intensively forage on insects and berries for weeks before departure, storing energy in the form of fat that is gradually burned during flight. Studies have shown that birds modulate their intake based on the anticipated distance and difficulty of the route, revealing a remarkable foresight in planning that complements their navigational skills. Oceanic crossings demand a precise understanding of energy limits. Juvenile sooty shearwaters, tracked in 2010, were documented riding wind currents at low altitudes before ascending for long stretches over open water. By choosing optimal altitudes and adjusting flight patterns, they conserve vital energy while maintaining direction, demonstrating that physiology and environmental awareness are intertwined with successful navigation. Even short-distance migratory species exhibit energy-conscious behaviors. Pied flycatchers traveling between Scandinavia and West Africa take advantage of stopover sites rich in fruit and insects, learning which locations provide the best refueling opportunities. These learned decisions allow fledglings to survive harsh conditions, proving that navigation depends not only on instinctual heading, but also on managing limited energy reserves effectively. Interactions within a group can enhance or hinder a bird's ability to conserve energy. Flocks of European starlings and white storks often fly in V formations, reducing aerodynamic drag for trailing birds. Field observations in Spain revealed that individuals rotate positions within the formation, sharing the energetic burden and allowing the group to maintain speed and direction for longer periods without exhausting any single bird. Real-time changes in the environment challenge how birds regulate their energy. Sudden storms or unexpected headwinds force adjustments in speed, altitude, or route. Arctic terns navigating from the Arctic to Antarctica demonstrate incredible flexibility, often delaying stopovers or changing course slightly to take advantage of tailwinds, balancing the need to stay on course with conserving energy over a journey that spans tens of thousands of kilometers. Memory and experience enhance energy decisions over time. Adult birds returning to the same routes year after year learn which stopovers offer the most reliable food and shelter, and which segments of their path require maximum effort. Satellite tracking of bar-headed geese in the Himalayas showed that experienced individuals timed high-altitude crossings to coincide with favorable thermals, cutting energy costs dramatically compared with first-time migrants. Physiological adaptations complement behavioral strategies. Fat-storing mechanisms, changes in muscle composition, and efficient respiration all support extended flights, enabling birds to push beyond limits that would overwhelm most animals. Observations of blackpoll warblers in North America revealed that their bodies shrink non-essential organs before migration, reallocating energy to flight muscles, showing that energy management is a sophisticated combination of internal preparation and external navigation. Managing energy effectively allows birds to turn the perilous challenge of migration into a journey they can endure. By integrating internal reserves, environmental cues, social cooperation, and learned strategies, birds can traverse thousands of kilometers with remarkable efficiency. The precision with which they regulate effort, timing, and altitude reveals that navigation is inseparable from the careful management of energy, making every successful migration a testament to both instinct and adaptive intelligence.